Welcome to the crochet. Today I will be bringing you through the process of how I made Combusken. We will first break down Combusken into basic shapes. For the upper body, we have a longish hemisphere with some feathers at the edges on the right and left sides. For this, I increased 6 stitches per round to the diameter I want and did single crochet rows until I get the length I want. It ended up to be 8 increased rounds and 20 single crochet rounds to achieve these dimensions that I was happy with. I did another increased round to 54 stitches for the last round to prepare for the feathers on both sides, which I created using 20 stitches on each side. I took 5 stitches for each feather to create the triangle, working in rows and decreasing 1 stitch per row until there is only 1 stitch left. For the lower body, it was just 2 spheres that are joined at the top, so I started off with a chain to estimate the size of the lower body with reference to the upper body. It turned out to be 48 chain stitches. Then I worked in rounds, increasing 6 stitches each round up to 72 stitches, and split this section into 2 to start creating the 2 spheres. I followed the general formula to create a sphere from the mid section onwards, doing 6 single crochet rounds for the mid section and decrease rounds of 6 stitches per round until 6 stitches were fastened off and weaved through. After I completed one section, it looked something like this. I was pretty happy with the shape of it, so I used the same pattern to create the second section of the lower body, starting with a standing stitch for the start of the round. After some time, I had 2 sections that were identical, and it looked something like this. So I stuffed the upper and lower body and pinned it in place for sewing. Next, I started with the chest feathers in the center. It was an odd shape like this with 2 tiers with triangular edging. So I started off with a chain to estimate the length of the feathers with reference to the body, and it turned out to be 8 chain stitches. I worked in rows for the chest feathers and increased 2 stitches per row for 3 rows up to 14 stitches and fastened off the first tier to get something like this. For the second tier, I did the same, starting with a standing stitch and worked in rows from 8 stitches to 14. I was happy with how it turned out and did the same for the back of the body as well. Next, for the limbs, it was troublesome because there is an elbow joint for the limb. There are also feathers at the edge of the hand. The nails are pretty long as well, but it should just be 3 sections of cylinders that can be sewn on the limb later on. So I started off with a chain of stitches to estimate the circumference of the limb at the top with reference to the body, which turned out to be 12 chain stitches, and did 8 single crochet rounds without increase to get the cylinder shape of the base of the limb. Then I did an increase round to 18 and 2 more single crochet rounds to get the gentle increase at the base of the limb. To create the elbow joint now, I did 6 increased stitches and 6 decreased stitches to create the sharp L. The side with the increased stitches would bend outwards, while the decreased stitches will bend inwards. I did this for 3 rounds to establish the L shape. Then I continued with 2 single crochet rounds and 1 increased round. I did another 2 more single crochet rounds and got the desired length of the forearm. I crocheted on the back loops only to expose the front loops for the feather edging on the first decrease round. Then I started decreasing 6 stitches per round and fastened off and weaved in the last 6 stitches. Next, for the nails, I did a chain of 18 and split this into 3 sections of 6. Then I crocheted 2 rounds of 6 stitches and decreased 2 stitches to make 3 rounds of 4 stitches and fastened off to weave in 4 stitches. The first section looks something like this and looks proportionate to the limb, so I used the same method to make the second and third sections. After all the 3 nails are done, they look something like this. I pinned it in place and sewed it down. Next, for the feather edging, I used the front loops that were exposed in my first decrease rounds of the limbs and used the alternating pattern of slip stitch, single crochet, double crochet and single crochet again to alternate these stitches across the whole round. I did this for 2 rounds to accentuate the triangular shape, and it ended up looking something like this. Next, I decided that I wanted movable limbs for Combusken, so I sewed the base of the limb shut and sewed the 2 arms together by inserting the yarn through the same hole through the upper body on both sides and tied a double knot to secure it in place. This will help to create movable limbs, and it looks something like this in the end. Next, for the crown, it is something like a flattened sphere, but at the top split into 3 sections. The challenge would definitely be to create the color change at the correct stitches to make the nice shape here. So I started off with a chain of 12 yellow stitches and increased 6 stitches each to a total of 36, but interweaved a single crochet round at 24 and 30 stitches to make the slope gentler. The color change to orange started in the 3rd round, where I did 4 orange on each side of the circle, and I split the 8 yellow stitches to 3 sections of yellow stitches with 1 orange stitch in between the sections for the 4th round. I tried to match the colors of the previous rounds to make the pattern even, and managed to get something like this for the first section. I followed a similar pattern to create the middle section and the left section. After sewing the crown to the body, it turned out something like this. For the beak, it is just 2 semicircles, 1 larger and 1 smaller, so I started off with a magic ring of 6 and did increased stitches on each stitch to make 10 stitches and skip the rest. Then I did another increased row every other stitch on a 10 and fastened off to make the upper beak. It turned out something like this and was pretty proportionate. For the lower beak, I stopped at the 2nd round by following the same pattern of the upper beak. After sewing both the beaks down, it looks something like this. Next, for the leg, I had to make 3 toes and a cylinder for the stem of the leg and embroider the stripes on the stem later on. I started off with the back of the 3 toes to split into 3. I did a magic ring of 6 as usual and did 3 rounds of single crochet and increased round to 12 before splitting into 3 sections for each toe. I increased from 4 to 6 stitches for each toe, and for each toe I did 4 single crochet rounds and weaved in the last 6 stitches. After completing the first toe, it looked something like this. After 3 sections were done, this was the end result. I did a cylinder of 8 stitches for 4 single crochet rounds and sewed it to the base to get something like this. For the toenails, since they are pretty tiny, I just did 4 chains, worked in rows and skipped 1 stitch to make 3 slip stitches to end off. After I tied the nail to the toe, it looked something like this. I was happy with this, so I did the same for the rest of the nails, and with the complete set of nails, it looks something like this. Though we can't see it from the front view picture of Combusken, he has a tail at the back as well. There is a cone but sloping downwards on one side. To start off, I did a chain of 27 after some comparisons with the body and did 2 single crochet rounds before starting to decrease 3 stitches per round, but only on one side of the round. I also interweave 1 single crochet round in between each decrease round to create a gentler slope, and only started decreasing evenly after reaching 18 stitches. This created the nice decrease on only one side of the round shown, and the tail looks like this in the end. Last but not least, I made a semicircle with double crochet stitches at the bottom to create the orange base for the eyes. And the base looks something like this. I didn't have footage of the pupil, but it was just a magic ring of 3 for the whites and 6 slip stitches for the black outline. I think the eyes can be improved with using felt, but I didn't have felt on hand. Maybe I'll redo it next time. But that's all for Combusken, and here is the end product. That's all for today. Please like and subscribe for more crochet videos. Bye!